Okay, I'm just going to let you know that we are going to be starting our post-lunch presentation. So please do feel free to keep eating lunch. But if we can kind of bring the conversations just down, and before our keynote address, we're going to have a few presentations or a few people sharing. So we're going to start with a climate action call from our friends at Mothers Out Front.
Hi, everybody. Everybody have a good lunch? Yes. All right, good. I have a little bit, so I'm Megan Sullivan. I helped organize the conference, and I'm really, really happy to have everybody here. So we're in this room, we're gonna hear from our keynote speaker, then we're gonna go off to breakout rooms, the same rooms as this morning. Then we're gonna have a coffee break. There's coffee here and coffee across the hall, and then we'll be back up here for our final moderated panel. And then across the hall, you'll also be able to do some book signing and network further. So I also hope you have a chance to visit our sponsors. These organizations all are partners in our work, and we're very appreciative of their support of the conference, and in particular in keeping it affordable for you. So SunWealth invests in a better energy future by financing and managing solar projects that benefit diverse communities through clean power, carbon reduction, cost savings, and job creation. GreenVest, my GreenVest friends, not here, but they provide personal consulting on socially and environmentally responsible investing, financial planning, portfolio design, and management to match your values, as well as provide a competitive return. The Village Bank has a green lending program that assists customers in combating greenhouse gases. Yay, thank you for coming. Mass Power Choice specializes in the delivery of community-focused aggregations, including green aggregations, which can increase the amount of renewable electricity supplied to your community. Many of you are already customers of theirs. Thank you for your support. CMRK partners with local communities to provide environmental sustainability through the ethical collection of second chance clothing, shoes, and household items. I can attest they've been a really good partner for Medfield for many years. If you haven't stopped by to learn about how they can help your clothing recycling program, I suggest you do, right back there. Revision and its partner Sunbug are on a mission to make life better by building an equitable future across Massachusetts and New England with their solar EV charging, energy storage, and heat pump products. MassSave is a collaborative of Massachusetts electric and natural gas utilities and energy efficiency service providers that empower residents, businesses, and communities to make energy efficient upgrades by offering a wide range of services, rebates, incentives, trainings, and information. And I think we all know that you guys are a really great partner across our communities. So thank you for that. RARE, one of our platinum sponsors, invests in people and nature to solve our greatest conservation and development challenges. They partner with local leaders, individuals, and their communities to help co-manage, protect, and restore their natural resources against threats like climate change. About a year ago, Nathan and I had the opportunity to attend a RARE training on behavior-centered design offered via Zoom. We both noted how much we learned and also enjoyed the training, and this planted the seed for this conference. As Nathan mentioned earlier, RARE was our first platinum sponsor, and without their encouragement and support, I'm not sure we would have been bold enough to plan the conference, but I'm sure glad we did. So in addition to getting around the room to visit with our sponsors, I'd like to encourage you to visit the resource table, which is over there. All right, deep breath, you're all friends. Okay, I can do this. I'll slow down, right? I'd like to mention two groups in particular whose resources are there. These are amazing programs you should know about and for use in your communities. I mention these two groups in particular because these ladies traveled from New York and Delaware to be here today, and I wouldn't want you to miss connecting with them in person, but while you have the chance. Dorothy Riley, founder of Carbon Crew Project, you're here? There we are, is here with us today. Carbon Crew Project offers seamless scientific and social curriculum and guided plan making for adults and high school students to cut their footprints with high impact action within their own supportive community for free. And Sue Vatnik, there she is here from This Is What We Did. I've taken her effective climate conversation class, and I highly recommend it. Learning how to engage in conversations about climate with just about anyone is a skill we can all benefit from. They also have resources and training on clean money management and being effective climate leaders for teens and young adults. Again, both great resources to share widely among your community, and there are also other great resources. Mothers Out Front, I know, is over there, so please check those out. So And one of the best things about working on this conference is that I've gotten to know so many of you and so many people like Sue and Dorothy. Each time I had the chance to connect with someone new, each conversation ended with suggestions about who I should speak with next. I can confirm, and you can see, that there are a lot of us. I'm amazed at the dedication and commitment everyone here has for this work. We are working many different angles of this problem, and we all need to keep doing it. We have so many talented folks among us, and I appreciate that we've all taken the time to be here today. I hope you're learning new skills and approaches from each other that will be beneficial going forward. MassEnergize believes that household-level climate action propelled at scale is critical to reaching our climate goals. So grassroots leaders who are critical to help drive this change can't afford to start from scratch, and as evidenced here today, we don't need to. We have each other. Yes, we could have done this learning on Zoom, but another goal for this conference was for us to connect in person. I hope that you'll make connections that will continue to inspire and help you in your work, whether you've been at this for 40 years, 4 years, or 4 months. The work we do is hard, right? It's an uphill battle and can be exhausting. We really need each other and to be in this community to remain inspired and energized. But speaking of being inspired and energized, I'd like to thank 2 inspiring and energizing people who were here with us at the beginning. Dr. Das and Sabrina Shankman, you both agreed to come on board with this conference was just, an idea. So thank you for your willingness to step up into this with us, and look what you started. So even earlier than Dr. Das and Sabrina Shankman, Nathan and I had the opportunity to chat with Anne-Therese Gennari. Well, at first there appeared to be some scheduling obstacles in the way, we kept talking. The more Nathan and I thought about the kind of conference we wanted to have, we knew that Anne-Therese was the right person for this keynote. We felt her focus on shifting the climate narrative, the narrative on climate change so that we can act from courage and excitement rather than fear was a perfect message for today. And at the same time, I think Anne-Therese was learning what a great day we had planned and wanted to be involved. So we kept at it, and here we are. Anne-Therese is a TEDx speaker, educator, and author of the Climate Optimist Handbook. She has taught courses and lectured on climate optimism and mental health in the climate space at numerous colleges and universities. She asked me to keep my introduction brief, so I will just ask you, who doesn't love an optimist? I know you're going to love her. Anne-Therese Gennari.
Okay, I'm glad you all got some food in your systems. First of all, I want to make an announcement. I took a train this morning at 5 a.m., some applause please, from New York City to be here today. That's not my announcement. My announcement is that my husband and I have finally decided to leave the city, and we're moving to Massachusetts. So I am soaking up everything you guys are saying here today because we're going to buy a house. It has to be energy efficient, and I'm just taking notes. So thank you so much for all the work you do, and I am proud to become, what's the name? Massachusettsian? I don't know. Anyway, what is it? Massachusettsian. It's hard to spell Massachusetts, and now I have to learn that too. I don't even know. But anyways, I'm excited to be here, and that was my kind of exciting announcement. But let's dive in. I'm not pressing here, I'm pressing here. Oh, a little closer? Closer, okay. Everyone hear me now. I want you to envision that you're standing on this cliff, and you're looking out onto the horizon, and you see a storm approaching. Big dark clouds, maybe some lightning and thunder. And I should also add that you're living here on Earth thousands and thousands of years ago. So this is long before there was any civilization, and your home is simply a cave in the wall, and that's where you live and go about your day. And you are definitely at the mercy with nature. So you're looking at this storm. What is it presenting you more than anything else? Uncertainty. You know it's coming, most likely coming your way, but you don't know when it's gonna hit, how strong it's going to be, how long it's gonna last, the damage it's gonna cause, if it's gonna pull up a tree and swing in your way, you don't know. It's a lot of uncertainty. And so in the face of this uncertainty, what do? You will probably gather some food, some firework, maybe some family members if you have some, and then you will crawl into your cave and stay safely tucked away until the storm has passed. That is what the smart, sensible person would do. What you wouldn't do is venture out and explore new land, because that's just kind of stupid and dangerous. You would stay safely tucked away and hold on to things that you know will keep you safe. That's what most people would do. That's not what you would do. You would recognize that this storm isn't passing. It's only gonna stall and continue to intensify. And even if it does pass, or when it passes, a new storm will be building on the horizon, maybe even more intense than the first one. Because you have noticed that these storms are continuously getting more and more frequent and more intense. And so you realize that what we have to do right now is muster the courage and get the hell out of here. We have to explore something different. So in the face of this uncertainty, and although your brain is kind of telling you, yeah, we should just kind of like hold on, and no, we can't do that any longer, because you, the people who are sitting in this room, know that this is the time to find the courage to choose change. Climate change is like a storm approaching on the horizon. And for most people, when we are faced with this sort of uncertainty, it is really hard to do anything but what we're always used to, because that is not how our brains are wired. But luckily, there are some brave souls out there who understand that we must start exploring something different, to go look for new grounds, new horizons, new ways of living here on Earth. Maybe ways that are even better than what we're used to today, because the world we're building now and working towards can be more beautiful, more abundant, more vibrant than anything that we're used to today. And that is what we have to start exploring. So I just want to say thank goodness for you, truly. You are the brave ones, you're the crazy ones. You are the people who start conversations about climate change on family dinners, even though you know the path it might lead you down. So yeah, you are the ones with some guts in here. Thank you for that. You're also the ones who carry a great deal of light, and we need you to hold on to that light. Because yes, all of this journey towards something new, whatever that is both invigorating and exciting. It's also pretty exhausting at times, right? Sometimes it feels like you're walking towards the wind, and almost like the wind is like out to get you and like blow you over. Anyone feel like that? Yeah. So for us to sustain this work, and I wish I could say this journey is over tomorrow or next year, but it isn't, right? It's gonna take decades to transform the world into something different. And so we have to continue to show up for that with curiosity and excitement and passion and optimism and joy. And for us to do that, we have to figure out how to not just be a change maker, but to sustain and remain a change maker. And so what I wanna go over with you in the next 25 minutes is to how to become and remain a climate optimist. Now, it's a term that I've sort of coined, but it's used widely these days. But I will explain to you what I mean by that term and how I think all of you are climate optimists, but maybe the work that can really nurture you in that process. So let's just start with kind of defining what climate optimism is. Has anyone heard the term before? Hands up? Yeah, great. When I started talking about climate optimism years ago, people really did frown, and the question was always, but how can we be optimistic about climate change? Like, you're crazy. And my response, I always wanted to say, you're the crazy one. Like, how could we not be? But I'll get to that in a second. But what's been interesting is that just in the past year and a half or so, this term has really picked up some pace. It's become almost like a trendy word, and I see a lot of climate optimism. I set out a Google alert for climate optimist and climate optimism about 2 years ago. And in the beginning, I got a few articles here and there. Today, I get daily. I can't even keep up. The term is being used everywhere around the world, which is amazing. It makes me really excited. But what's interesting is that there's also been some pushback and concern about climate optimism, which is fair. And so I'm going to go through what different kinds of climate optimism is and how to aim for the right one. The first one is what I would say passive optimism. And these articles started to surface, and I really looked at the one from Climate Affairs because my book title is in it. You see the Climate Optimist Handbook with yellow text up there? That's my book. And so the title says, Climate Optimism is Dangerous and Irrational. And here I was in my early motherhood, kind of like emotional and hormonal, and I'm like, what? I just wrote a whole book about this. But then, I really skimmed the article and read it for what it was, and I realized that I felt that they had missed the point about climate optimism, and I can see how it can be dangerous if approached the wrong way. If your approach to climate optimism is looking at the good news of maybe having, again, a Google alert or having an account on Instagram or whatever you do to acquire good news and positive news, that's a really important piece of climate optimism. I'm so glad there is more good news circulating. We can't just know about the doom and gloom. We have to also know that things are happening. I mean, look at this room. So it's great that we have access to more and more positive climate news. But if that is the only thing that we do, it can become very passive, and that's when it gets dangerous. That's when people say, oh, look, things are happening. We are in the right heading in the right direction. So I don't have to worry. Things are going to be great. We're going to figure this out. Yeah, well, there's still much more doom than optimism. I hate to say it. So if that's the only thing we do, it becomes passive, and that can become really dangerous for our movement. It also sort of taps into toxic positivity or technic optimism, which is this. Toxic positivity is like, I want things to be great, so that I'm going to think positive thoughts and they're going to manifest in the world around me. Almost like a little bit law of attraction or wishful thinking, which is, yeah, it's good for your soul, but it doesn't really lead to the optimism that we need. In fact, in my early days as a climate optimist, I tried this approach. I tried to only tune into positive news and really wish that things were going to turn out well. And my climate anxiety was through the roof. So I know for a fact that it doesn't work. There's also the sense of like, well, technology is going to save us. I really believe in technology. Or my favorite, my husband isn't here today, so I will kind of put him on the spot. But he will say, you know what? Humans have figured it out in the past, and we will figure it out again. And I don't even have the energy anymore. I'm like, yeah, but you know what? I also have faith in humanity, and I have faith in technology because we will do something with it. We have figured it out because people in the past found the willpower to do something. And that is what we have to tap into right now. We can't just say, we will figure it out. Well, who is we, right? So that's also where it can get dangerous if we get stuck there. But then we have radical optimism. And this is getting closer to the climate optimism I'm talking about. And this is understanding that optimism requires action. In fact, that is where optimism is born. It's also understanding that we have to hold space for all the feelings, both the negative and the positive. I love this quote by the Radical Optimist Collective, amazing name, by the way. A radical optimist is not someone with a Pollyanna view of the world, but one that recognizes we can and must hold pain and possibility at the same time in order to create space for healing and change. That is where radical optimism is. I also love when you can plug a climate scientist into the mix, and so I included a paragraph from Michael Mann's latest book, and it goes, the greatest threat to meaningful climate action today is no longer denial, but despair and doomism, premised on the flawed notion that it is too late to do anything. So yes, through the lines here, you see there is also a bit of climate optimism. So for me, this is my definition of it. Climate optimism is a mindset shift that sparks optimism, creativity, and solutions thinking, while keeping a fact-based and awareness-driven approach to climate change. And that's where we are right now. So how does one become a climate optimist? And most importantly, how do you remain one? I love this opportunity to speak here today because normally when I talk about and give lectures, I talk a lot about communication and how we communicate climate change differently. And I attended one session this morning and I watched the panel. We don't need that. You guys are getting that already. There's so many experts on that field here. So I'm thankful. Today, I get to focus it back to you. Who is the optimist in you, and how do you nurture that person as much as you possibly can? And so I'm going to share with you, and this is another little drum roll here, because you're the first who ever gets introduced to this Venn diagram. I had this moment over Christmas. I woke up literally in the middle of the night, and I'm like, that's it. And I had to run to grab a pen and paper. And I have been waking up through the night for 1.5 years because of my baby. So like for me to get up voluntarily means something, right? So I jotted this down, and it became so clear to me. This is in a nutshell what the book is about and what I'm trying to help people understand. And the truth is that all of you already embody this in one way or another, but it can be helpful to really see it on a screen like this and to kind of dissect the different pieces and what role they play and how they play into each other. So I'm gonna go through this step by step with you here and really showcase that optimism, true optimism, isn't something that you just choose. Like, oh, I'm an optimist, or I want to be optimistic today, because that's just, it's fleeting, right? Optimism is something that you nurture from within, and you create it through participating in the action. I also have a term called optimist in action, or an OIA, if you want to be trendy. And it's simply being the change means that you start to believe in the change, right? Someone here mentioned earlier that it helps with anxiety, which is true. You start believing that things are possible because you're showing for yourself that things are possible. I also love this quote by Susanna Schwabsdorf, I hope I said that right. Our ability to sustain a positive outlook means tending to it constantly. Yes, optimism takes work, but it's rewarding, fun, and exciting work. So let's start by diving in. I'll go into the left corner here. And so every piece of this Venn diagram is about activating your inner leadership, because that is where change happens. We are the change. A better world is possible because we make it so, right? So this machinery right here is so important. So the inner development work is where the emotional resilience piece happens. This is where we nurture ourselves and grow our ability to understand the complexities of the crisis, understand what needs to be done, but without losing ourselves to hopelessness and despair. What happens here is what I call awareness hurts, and that's okay. This was mind-blowing to me when I understood that I can know about the reality, I can have the space for that awareness, and yeah, it hurts sometimes. It hurts to know that we've lost, what was it, 68% of all wildlife since, I just learned this, sorry, my brain is fried. We've lost so much wildlife. We are continuously losing natural spaces. It's called eco-grief. You know, we can hold space for that. And it's okay that things hurt. It doesn't always have to be happy-dappy and floating on clouds. It's okay to hold space for that. And as we nurture ourselves and we get better and better at holding space for that, our resilience grows and our willingness to take action grows. And so it's really about expanding our hearts and nurturing our souls and tending to ourselves in a way that we can continuously stay aware, but also not lose the willingness to take action. I love this quote by Paris Penstorknes. It's from his book. There's a hidden secret in the despair paradox. Going down the depths of despair can also bring healing. The more we let death, even the threats of extinction, into our souls, the more we can appreciate the current vibrant vitality of life in its many forms. And we may even be transformed by it. So diving into despair can be transformative. And I'm sure many of you have actually had that experience. So to kind of wrap up the inner development piece, and oh, I didn't mention, in the outer corners, the square around it, they represent the 4 happiness hormones. And I want you to think about them as your fuel, because the more happiness hormones we have in our bodies, the more empowered we feel, the more optimistic we feel, the more likely we are to reach out to people and have conversations, which we know is really important. And so the main one here is serotonin. Serotonin is a mindfulness hormone that comes from connecting to ourselves and the world around us. There are multiple tools for creating this sort of, both creating serotonin, but working on it in a development in my book. But it can be things like journaling exercises, reflective exercises. It can be discussions in groups, mindful media intake, which is really important to like finding your balance. How much can you take in, and how can you raise that level? But this is also ongoing work. It's like you can't just show up to the gym once and eat one good salad and think you're good for life, right? You have to continuously show up for that work. Same goes with inner development work. And the two kind of like, so hard to say, I can't really point. What it really creates is connectivity to ourselves and all parts of ourselves, our deeper selves, our outgoing selves, and having a much better flow between those selves. Connection to the world around us and the natural world. The more connected we feel to nature around us, the more resilient we feel, the more grounded we are, and also the more optimistic we feel in our willingness to save the beauty of the world. And also connectivity to the community around us, but we get into that more later. It also builds agency, because when we are strong from our core, we build efficacy and agency, which leads us into action. I love, is that the wrong button? 2 green buttons. I love this quote by Angela Davis that goes, "You have to act as if it were possible to radically transform the world, and you have to do it all the time." Amen. So in the action piece, it serves to talk a little bit, or a lot, about optimism, because this is really where the optimism happens. This is where we grow our optimism, by taking action. And so what are the roles of optimism? And as you may know, I might get nerdy here, because this is kind of my field, and I've really have like been diving into this topic for many years now. Well, to keep it simple, three steps. We need optimism to take action. Have you ever thought about why we can be optimistic? Because we are the only species that can do this. I think there might be one whale they discovered that can think about the future, but like aside from that, we are the only species that can think about future events, like something that hasn't happened yet. Like, what am I gonna cook for dinner tonight? Where are we gonna go for vacation this summer? We can think about the future. And we can have expectations on that future, meaning what I'm cooking tonight is gonna taste delicious, or we're gonna plan to go to Alaska next summer and it's gonna be great. And if you think about it, if we didn't think that our cooking was gonna turn into a delicious dish, or if you're thinking the trip to Alaska wasn't gonna be great, why would we ever put in the effort to getting there, right? Optimism leads to action. And in fact, 80% of us are optimistically biased, meaning we walk around thinking that the future is going to be better than it actually turns out to be. Now, it might seem silly, we're tricking ourselves a lot of the time, but again, it helps us to take action. And yes, maybe it isn't as fabulous as you thought it would be, but it's probably better than not doing anything at all, right? And maybe cooking turned out to be a disaster, but you learned something from it. And so again, optimism is necessary for taking action. I love this quote by Hannah Ritchie. She just came out with a book called Not the End of the World this year. It's a science-based, fact-based approach to climate optimism. I highly recommend it. So Not the End of the World by Hannah Ritchie. But she says, optimism is seeing challenges as opportunities to make progress. It's having the confidence that there are things we can do to make a difference. Simple as that. The economist Paul Romer also defined it as two different kinds of optimism, complacent and conditional. And so complacent optimism is the feeling of a child waiting for presents. So very similar to passive optimism in a way. Conditional optimism is the feeling of a child who is thinking about building a tree house. If I get some wood and nails and persuade some other kids to help do the work, we can end up with something really cool. And I want us all to tap into that inner child right now who wants to build a tree house. Yes, I want to build a tree house. Yes, I want to build another world, a better world than this one. That is optimism we have to tap into. Let's build a better world. It also enhances your chances. There is an article in Time magazine that found from a study that optimists are 40% more likely than pessimists to get a work promotion within the next year. 40%. And this is not wishful thinking. It's nothing to do about people sitting home and meditating and doing all the hooky-pooky work. It's nothing about that. People who are optimistic are gonna look for the opportunities, act on the opportunities, do the work to get there. If they fail, they're gonna try again because they believe inherently that they can get there. And so just by being optimistic about the outcome will lead you to take action and enhance your chances of actually getting there. There's also a study that show that you can raise your IQ by 13 points by having an abundant mindset. This was a study made quite small, so take it for what it is, but a small study made with farmers, and they just compared pre-harvest and post-harvest. And the IQ points on average went up 13% because they were not stressed about the harvest anymore. And so just the fact that you feel like, okay, I'm taken care of, money's good, you get smarter. So another reason for being optimistic. And last but not least, it increases quality of life right now, which could, mean something because we are the hard workers making a new world happen, and so we deserve to feel good doing that work. It also makes us healthier and live longer lives. A study with over 70,000 women followed for over 10 years showed that those who scored the highest on an optimism questionnaire had a significantly lower risk of death from heart attacks, 38%, and strokes, 39%. That's quite significant. And so yes, being an optimist make you live healthier lives too. And I sometimes like to be blunt, I do get questioned a lot about climate optimism. It's like, can we really afford to be optimistic? And here's what I say, if we didn't think a climate just future is possible, how would we make the choices now to manifest one? And I really think that kind of answers it all. Yes, we do need a bit of optimism to make change happen, but we work for it and we create that optimism together. Which, actually I'll wrap this up first. So really the main hormone here is dopamine. Dopamine is a feel-good hormone. You produce a lot of it when you get things done, when you make a to-do list and you cross them off and you feel awesome. That's dopamine. You also get dopamine from sleeping well and taking care of yourself, eating good foods. And so self-care, good health is really important for us to stay optimistic. Thank you. I have 10 more minutes. And then that leads us into community, which is the last part. Because yes, tending to ourselves is important, but doing it in community with others is essential. And I'd like to compare our climate work to a road trip. Has anyone in here ever been on a road trip? Hands up. Okay, keep them up. No. Keep your hand up if you did that road trip by yourself. Oh, there are a few people. That's cool. I want to talk to you later. Maybe that's really fun. Okay, for the most part, people bring someone with them when they do a road trip. And it helps make a road trip a little bit more comfortable, right? You can take turns driving, meaning if you get tired, someone else can take over the driving wheel, unless that person really can't drive, which then in that case don't. But for the most part, we can ask for help. And in the climate work, there will be days when you wake up and you're like, I'm just tired. I don't want to change the world today. I don't want to talk to anyone about renewable energy or whatever it is. I just want to climb up on my couch and watch a good show, and that's it. And it is okay to have those days. It's okay to have a lot of those days, because we need to refuel and tend to ourselves too. And if you're in a community, you know that there's someone else out there working on your behalf that day, right? Someone else is taking up the brunt of the work, because there's so many people out there who are passionately working for a better world. And so sometimes we can rest and someone else is out there doing the work. Having a community also helps you have fun, right? Like I said, this is a long journey. We're not going to reach the end of it tomorrow or even in 10 years. There's continuous work of continuously finding new ways, better ways, learning from mistakes and continuing on. And so we can't wait until the day to start having fun. The fun needs to start happening right now. We have to start embracing and enjoying and loving life right now. You can also find support and reassurance on the days when your climate anxiety is through the roof, or you just talk to some really annoying neighbor who just doesn't get it. Then you have the community to tap back into. You can also share your growth and lessons of what you learned, and then help each other grow and learn even more. And then again, just knowing that you're not alone. Really, the most important piece here is oxytocin, which is a bonding hormone that we produce in community with others. A mother has a lot of oxytocin when she's breastfeeding to bond with her child, but in any sort of community work, even if you're cooking with friends or having a great phone call, you feel so good afterwards because you have oxytocin flowing through your body. And we need that to feel like we belong to something bigger. We're not alone, because we are definitely not alone on this journey. And so that is why the community piece is also so important for the connectivity and also for producing change. There is no power for change greater than a community discovering what it cares about. So thank you for that. That was the Venn diagram. And I wanted to just showcase it for you, because yes, you do embody all of this. But if we can really get this churning and continue to get it churning and help other people get it churning too, the people who are like, I'm gonna crawl into my cave and hold on tight because this is working and I know this is safe, and you can help them. And I know there are multiple tools and different workshop sessions here today. How do we invite others onto this journey and into this space? And the more we can get people activating their own inner leadership, the faster we can reach the world we want to head into. And so the final piece is at the very bottom, the emerging future. And as you can kind of see, it's the yellow arrow coming from the inner leadership piece. If we activate our inner leadership and we help others activate theirs, the emergent future will come from within us. We are the change, and a better world is possible because we make it so. I know that sometimes it might seem like the world is falling apart, and maybe it is, and maybe that's a good thing, so we could build something better, but just take a look around yourself and see what you're seeing. Because I see a room full of people who showed up today because they care about future generations, they care about the work they can put forth, they care about learning and growing, they wanted to come here to learn even more, to connect deeper, and to walk away with something new. I see a room full of change. And yes, I know it can seem like the world is falling apart, but there is resistance in claiming our inner peace. There is resistance in seeking joy and standing in our light. and there is resistance in being very clear about the future we want to move towards, and actively taking action today on pulling the future closer. One of my favorite quotes of all time, it's a quote that changed my life completely when I first read it, is by Mary Oliver. Keep some room in your heart for the unimaginable. And when I first came here today, I took a train, as you know, to the train station, and then I was contemplating taking public transportation, but it was way too complicated, so I actually just took a lift. And I was driving over here in the lift, and there was some sort of center, I don't remember the name now, and my head is kind of like going off, and I'm like, oh, I wonder who works here, just kind of like wondering about life. Wonder who works here, and then I saw all these cars in the parking lot, and it just hit me, like, whoever works here drove here today, and they all have their cars, and here I am in the car, and suddenly it was like, whoa, look at all the cars. And it's like, of course I know there are cars everywhere, but sometimes you're just so used to the norm that you don't see it. And for some reason, I suddenly saw all the cars, and then I was like, no, there's no chance, we're so stuck in this. Like, there's no way we're gonna get away from this. We are so used to driving our cars, and even if we try to electrify, we're just not gonna get there in time. And I had a little bit of a hopeless moment there, coming over here today, talking to you about optimism. But then I reminded myself, keep some room in your heart for the unimaginable. Because yes, it is easy to get stuck in what we see right in front of our eyes right now. But that is not tomorrow. Tomorrow is still unwritten. And we get to write and create that tomorrow today in the energy we bring forth, in what we tell ourselves, and how we activate, and how we invite people on board. And we have to remember this: what we will love tomorrow is for our curiosity today to explore. So thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much, Anne-Therese. This is something that all of us hard workers need to be reminded of, is to hold that place in our heart for the unimaginable and to move forward with optimism. So thank you. Thank you. Okay, folks, so we are now ready for the afternoon breakout session.
Hello, everyone. Oops. We're going to start the community coaching breakout session now. So if you're here for that, please stay. Please move to the center here so you can see and hear. And if you're not here for that and having a conversation, maybe you can move that out into the corridor, please. All right, welcome all. I'm Steve Bright. I'm wearing several hats here. I'm a co-founder of the Heat Smart Alliance, an all-volunteer organization, and a volunteer and board member for MassEnergize. And I'm very pleased to have with me Travis Estes of Abode Energy Management. You'll be hearing more about the other participants' roles soon. Andrea Becerra and Deborah Symes representing the coaching program in Acton, and Susan Murphy representing the coaching program in the city of Melrose. So this session is really about taking action. And just a little bit about the Heat Smarter Alliance. Our mission is to reduce emissions by accelerating adoption of energy-efficient heat pumps in Massachusetts homes and buildings. We provide a forum for sharing and learning about heat pumps and related technologies, knowledgeable speakers and tabling for local events, one-on-one residential heat pump coaching, and training and support for local heat pump coaches. We're all volunteers. We have over 100 at this point from 46 Massachusetts communities and a number of communities outside the state. So why residential energy coaching? Well, despite the available incentives, reducing a home's carbon footprint, actually taking action can be daunting to homeowners. For most of them, they have to come up a learning curve that is something they're only going to do once every 10, 15, 20 years. And it leads to delays and, in some cases, deferred decisions, no decision, or suboptimal results. Coaching works. Residents really appreciate one-to-one help. I just speaking personally, it's just really gratifying when you take an action to get a response, to see some impact within a few months, that they installed a heat pump, that they got rooftop solar, that they bought an EV. Those are all things where you can say, well, I may have had some impact on that, some positive impact. And just getting to know your neighbors and other residents in the town better is also fun. So there's been a rapid growth of local coaching programs over in the state over the last 3 or 4 years. We counted, and we did a survey last summer. We counted about 20 programs that we knew about. There are probably more that we don't know about. And you can see the growth over this 4-year period. Concord, Mass. Was one of the first to do an organized coaching program, and they did a report for their sponsor on that program. And if you look carefully at the data, actually they kind of didn't pull this out of the report, but they had a count of the number. It was focused on heat pumps, and they had a count of the number of residents who installed heat pumps without any coaching and the number who did it. And over the 2 years that that pilot program ran, there was a significant increase in the number of heat pump installations from people who received coaching. Can we say for sure that the coaching was the main factor? No, there were other complicating factors, but it certainly looked suggestive that the coaching was impactful. So we set out last summer to do this survey. We surveyed 16 communities that we knew about. 12 had operating programs, 4 were in the planning stage, and in the course of the survey, we learned about 2 more programs that we didn't survey. So the summary, the programs we were aware of, there were about 8 or 9 programs there that were sponsored by the local municipality. Abode Energy Management was involved in many of those, in helping them train the coaches or actually providing consultations. And the Heat Smart Alliance also was involved in giving them startup help and then sometimes training the coaches. There was one municipal light plant, Concord, which ran a program. And then there were a number of grassroots local volunteer organizations that did set up their own coaching programs, some of which the Heat Smart Alliance was involved in. And there are more programs that have started since last summer. And then there were 2 programs that were information. The Beverly and Cambridge were not surveyed, but we learned about their programs after we had completed the survey. So represented on today's panel, we have the town of Acton and the city of Melrose, both of whom engaged Abode Energy Management. And I'll be the representative from the town of Wayland, where we have a volunteer group called MassEnergize Wayland. And we've trained coaches and providing coaches to the residents. So we have lots of things to discuss. What I'm going to do now is we'll ask each of our contributors here to speak about their role in coaching, first Travis Estes and then the 2 towns, and then we'll go through this series of questions and we'll get as far as we can. I'm sure we'll run out of time before we run out of questions. And I'll guide the questioning at the beginning, but then give the audience an opportunity to ask some questions. So.
All right. Hey, everyone. Thanks for having us today. I'm going to be brief mainly because I think there are going to be a lot of great questions, and we've got some great panelists with some awesome experience. So Abode Energy Management is a Massachusetts-based energy efficiency and decarbonization consulting firm. We have been in this space as contractors in the past lives for many decades in some cases, and we support a lot of the efficiency and decarbonization programs throughout New England. One of the things that we've learned over the years, though, is that the things that we're doing well can also be done well by other people. And so as we've evolved our own practice, we've taken a look at what we're doing, kind of dialed them in, made mistakes, learned from them, and then kind of started to really try to scale them as effectively as possible with a variety of partners. So that kind of walk, crawl, walk, run approach for us is really pretty critical as we move forward. So we've learned a lot in the last couple of years. Back in 2020, we launched a initiative to support residents through heat pump consultations. We've now completed actually over 10,000 of these. And a lot of the things that we've learned are pretty common sense, but needed to really be understood and validated as part of our own development. I think it's pretty intuitive, but customers' needs vary dramatically. What's important to one person may not be important to another. Homes matter, the types of homes that they live in, and the different kind of solutions that they may be seeking are not always consistent. And so there's been a phrase for the last 5 or 10 years kind of in the utility sector about meeting customers where they are. And I think that that really resonates in the sense that a lot of folks kind of know what they know, but they also don't know what they don't know. And so in our engagements, oftentimes we have a chance to capture someone's attention, support them with the things that they know they want, and then broaden the aperture of things that they should also be considering and adopting, which is really important. When it comes time to helping people, early support matters. There are a lot of common mistakes that can be mitigated by a little bit of planning and a little bit of forethought, and so that's really important. Another piece is around scale. There are a lot of ways to help folks. You can kind of hold their hand through every step of the process, which can be great. That can also be difficult to scale when we're trying to reach tens of thousands of people here in the Commonwealth every year. So we've got to find that balance, and I think that's where these types of collaborations and programs come in. And so as we've been doing this, I would say that we've continued to think about what we're doing, what's working, and what can other people do. And so we've had the chance to engage with partners, both at MassEnergize and many other towns, to start to take what we've learned and say, you can do this. And MassEnergize was doing this as well, kind of on their own, finding kind of what was working and helping to distribute those learnings. And we're following kind of the model. I think that it's incredibly important. The need to fight climate change is so vast and so immediate that if you've got an answer that works, you need to get it out there. There was that comment earlier this morning about the copy and paste approach. I think if we find things that work, let's put it out there so others can do it as well. So in our experience, one of the things that we noticed was well over 30% of the time, we were having the same conversations over and over with folks. So people would come in with a lot of the same needs and the same kind of foundational context. And so we thought to ourselves, all right, how do we actually take that information and put it out there so folks who might not have the same building science expertise or the same mechanical design sizing expertise, how can we help them still have influential and important conversations that help set folks in their communities down the right trajectory? And so that was a big focus of why we started this, is building that foundation of understanding and helping to set realistic expectations. We've been doing that in Massachusetts now for about a year or so, and then we also had the opportunity to collaborate with Rewiring America to try to test this out at a national scale. So we were able to kind of zoom out just a little bit, a little less regionally specific information and more kind of broad decarbonization education, with the goal of, again, laying that foundation to build that network of influencers and educators within the community. And I'm happy to say that we have another cohort starting tomorrow. We are looking at nearly 500 folks that have already been enrolled. So kind of as I'm wrapping up here, we continue to learn, we're continuing to adapt, and we're continuing to grow. We now know not every volunteer wants to be a coach, and so finding places for folks to add value where it makes sense to them is important. I think that we'll hear from Acton, and their experience really reflects that. And I think that at the end of the day, we're looking ahead to a landscape that is evolving quickly through programs like Mass Save. You're going to see more programs that are supported to help volunteers access this type of information and be an active player in the education within the communities, which we'll probably get into in the Q&A. So really excited about everything we've done here. At the end of the day, for all of us, this is about providing clarity, building confidence, and helping people to take action. Thanks, Steve.
Andrea and Deborah.
Thank you. Is this on or? Oh, it's on. There we go. Ooh. Hello, everyone. My name is Andrea. I'm with the Town of Acton, the Sustainability Director, and I've been with the town for about 3 years now. And I'm really excited to talk about this program with Deborah, who will introduce herself. Do you want to introduce yourself now and then?
I'm Deborah Symes. I'm a community member who's been involved in environmental and climate stuff for you know, I'm old, so decades, whatever. Go.
And I'm very excited to talk about this program with Deborah. I really feel like it's one of our flagship programs. I think we're all very proud of it because it works so well, and it feels like a fine-tuned, well-oiled machine at this stage, but it definitely has its kinks, and we have to continue giving it love to keep the momentum going, and we'll talk more about that further along. But how we started. So when I started as a sustainability director, I started getting phone calls and emails from residents in a panic, like, I have to switch to a heat pump. My furnace just broke, and I don't know what to do. I studied policy, you know. I'm not a heat pump expert. I can't tell you what your home needs. And this is an expensive investment. I mean, this is not cheap. So people are going to be putting in money into a system that's going to be in place for 15, 20 years. And so I don't want to give them the wrong information. And so I kept getting these calls, these emails, and I felt a bit hopeless, or not hopeless, but helpless. I couldn't really help residents in the way that they needed the help. And then I got connected with Abode. So we did a procurement process and partnered with Abode, and Abode helped fill that very important gap. And so they provided a lot of the technical expertise that we needed to support residents in making smart and well-informed decisions, and that they could feel confident in the decisions they were making around switching their heating systems to cleaner options. A year after the program, in speaking with volunteers and with Abode, actually, we talked about shifting the model of how the program ran and depending more on volunteers. And this is for two reasons. One, to have that community connection, so give people the option to speak to people who have had their systems changed, have gone through the process of moving their home away from fossil fuels, installing solar, getting an electric vehicle charger installed, doing all of the things to make their home net zero. And also, for the second point, to make it a more sustainable program. So make it a more cost-effective program. Because for the first year that we operated, every time a resident called Abode, the town covered that bill. So it was a free for the residents, but the town was paying for that bill. And so we knew we couldn't do that forever. So we wanted to establish something that could be more sustainable from a financial side as well. And so together with volunteers from Energize Acton and the Acton Climate Coalition, we came together and worked with Abode to set up the first cohort of coaches. And we recruited members of the community to apply, and the ones who were accepted went through the training program, the free training program through Abode, and the program has been in operation now officially for about a little over a year. We had our second cohort of coaches recently inducted, and we tried out a new system of training, also more cost-effective because we use Rewiring America and Abode as well. But then we also used our existing coaches to help train new coaches. So the program is changing a bit as we go, but I think it's getting better and better, and we're figuring out better ways of training, better ways of recruiting folks, and we have a pretty energized set of new coaches on board right now. And then as part of that recruitment process, we created the Clean Energy Coach Advocates, and Deborah's going to talk a little bit more about that in speaking about program operation and the program promotion. So with that, I'll pass it on to Deborah.
I'm going to talk real fast. So, sorry? Real fast. Okay. Couple things. One is, as Andrea said, we've been doing this for a little over a year. We've served so far about 138 households. And I think, sort of piggybacking on what these guys each said, I think one of the beauties of this kind of program is that people's needs around clean energy tech are all over the map. You know, it's from somebody who's like deep in the rabbit hole already and just needs somebody to go, yeah, what you're saying makes sense. We think this is a sound way forward, to I know I should do things, I have no idea what I'm doing or what I should do. So, and I think one of the beauties of this is that our coaches are sort of trained to be really client-focused and to really pay attention to what the client is sort of saying they want or need, and then to be available to give as much or as little guidance as the people need, and to, as someone else earlier said, there's a fair amount of hand-holding that can be helpful in this process, because people who don't live in this crazy space overwhelmed by all the information, all the options and incentives and costs and all of that. We've done a fair amount of promotion. We're just gearing up for another round of promotion of the program. So we do all the usual things, a lot of social media through town municipal vehicles that are available to us. We literally put flyers up around town because some people still respond to that. And a variety of other things we can talk about offline. And a couple other things I just want to say quickly. One of the features of our program is we now have 12 coaches, wow. We have one person who does all the managing of the requests and putting them out so that coaches can sign up for the requests as they come in. We have monthly coach meetings, the coaches and the advocates. The advocate team is a small team of us who design and execute promotion, and sort of, we did the recruitment for new coaches and did the vetting and all of that. So we're a little bit arms around kind of tiny entity. So we do this monthly meeting of coaches and advocates, which is great because people get to learn from one another about what works, what doesn't, what they've encountered, questions, all of that sort of thing. We have a enormous spreadsheet that has all the information so that coaches are inputting what they're doing and learning, and for particular clients. We have a resource page for coaches that's kind of long at this point, but there's everything we can think of, we just throw into that resource page so that coaches, if they have a question, can go look there and see if they can find the answer, and if not, a boat is always in the wings to help us. And the other thing we are trying to do a bit more of is including coaches when there are events in town where we're doing any kind of paying any kind of attention to these issues. We're getting the coaches more involved in being like on site, doing, being available for house tours and explaining what's going on, or so that people can learn more about the program. What am I forgetting?
No, I think that's it. Okay. I guess the one thing I would add is that the coaching experience, so we did a survey. We only got 11 responses out of the 138 people who have used the program. So we're trying to get more information from people who have used the program. But pretty much everyone who answered had installed a heat pump. And many said that they installed it much faster had they not used a clean energy coaching program, or had they not used the program. The other thing I would add is that in those surveys, we found out that residents, we heard about one resident who spoke with a coach for over an hour on the phone while sitting in the parking lot, and that it was the most helpful conversation. A lot of coaches actually have gone to their home at the request of the resident, and they've walked through the basement, looked at their attic. They've really worked with the resident to help them get their home where they want it to be. And I think that's the invaluable piece, is having that community connection, having that person that can come to your house, and having also the infrastructure of a partner like Abode that you can also rely on to help set up the program, and the technical experts that you can sort of rely on when you have those important gaps in information. Because the coaches don't know everything. I think our first cohort of coaches is much more of an expert now, and some of them know a lot because a few coaches have helped many residents, and I feel like now they truly are becoming experts. But there's still gaps in information, and it's helpful to have that technical partner.
I want to add one quick thing, which is there's a big focus on heat pump systems, obviously, but coaches are trained also to talk about solar, to talk about weatherization and insulation, to talk about EVs, to talk about electricity sourcing, so we can get people hooked up to the greenest possible electricity supply. So hot water heaters, all those things, energy efficient appliances. So there's a big focus on heat pumps, but it is not necessarily the sole focus. Like one person just contacted us because they wanted to know about hot water heating, right? So we were like, sure, we can do that. Anyway.
That's great. Thank you, and thanks for going into some depth on your program. All right, Susan Murphy from. You and I will share this.
How do I? These are Acton's slides, so I'll go past those.
Should be giving you.
You can see the range of services they provide. I am the heat pump coach coordinator for the city of Melrose. And just a little bit of background, our program kind of arose in a way that's similar to Acton's, but as just sort of background, Melrose has always sort of tried to do a lot of these programs. We've done a couple of rounds of SolarEyes, we've done a bunch of weatherization challenges, and we had done the Heat Smart program, which was a heat pump outreach and bulk purchasing program in 2020. And that one resulted in 135 heat pump installations. And when that ended, we were really looking for a way to sort of continue that momentum, and coaching seemed like a great way to do it, but we really wanted to have some expert technical backup, which we had during the Heat Smart program. And so looking for sources to do that. And so we went to Abode, as Acton did. For us, it was part of a community first partnership that Melrose has with MassSave and National Grid. So we have actual funding from National Grid to run these programs, and it's focusing specifically on increasing uptake of home energy assessments and weatherizations and heat pumps. So we have specific targets for heat pumps. And so this coaching program is very specifically heat pump, although we do tend to talk to people about other things specific, particularly weatherization, because that has a lot to do with the load for your heat pump and electricity sources. But we also have a solar coach in Melrose that's sort of separate from this, as well as other resources for EVs and such. So through the Community First Partnership, we had a contract with Abode, and they were doing, until the coaches were trained, they were doing their own consultations as they were doing in Acton, and we also had we had an installer list, we had access to their quote comparison tool, and then they provided the training. So we're probably 6 months behind Acton in terms of setting up this volunteer program. We started probably in June of last year, and we have 3 coaches, including me, 2 volunteers, and then I get paid a little bit to sort of administer the program. And one of our coaches is actually the photographer today, Raj, so he's fantastic. So thank you, Raj. We try to provide kind of flexible services depending on what people are looking for. Sort of a full-fledged coaching assignment does involve that they fill out a questionnaire, and the coach goes to the house, does a walkthrough with them, talks to them about what their goals are, looks at the house in terms of what kind of systems they have, what's the weatherization status of the home, have they gotten all the weatherization work that they need done, what is like the best kind of system set up for them, and gives them a really detailed follow-up summary of what they found and what the recommendations are, and really follows them through the process to the extent that they're interested in doing it. Some people just, have a question, or they just want some information, and those are the sort of usually the ones that I handle. One thing that having a sort of staff person has allowed us to do is to try and be really prompt in our response. Like if people have a question, we try and just sort of answer it within 24 hours and get a coach to them quickly, so that so if they're looking for help, that they can get it pretty quickly. In the 9 months since we started the program, we've had, I think, 49 sort of full-fledged consultations. And we're looking to sort of increase the percentage of people who are looking at heat pumps that we're reaching through various outreach. So that's one of our challenges. It has been increasing. We probably averaged maybe 3 a month in 2023, and it's been more like 7 or 8 in 2024. But we really do want to reach more people, because we know this is really challenging for people. Melrose in particular has a very challenging housing stock. It's full of old Victorians, and, you hear the term like catastrophic airflow from a boat when you're talking about Melrose houses in a way that like I'm not sure other people really experience. Like we'll have houses that have gone through 2 rounds of weatherization and air sealing, and they still can't pressurize it to 50 megapascals to do a blower door test. But so we have a really interesting housing stock. So it's really, I think, really beneficial to have the kind of local knowledge we have from coaches who have been in a lot of Melrose houses and are familiar with the housing stock, and that's brought a real benefit to having the local knowledge combined with having a BODE as backup. But there's a lot of changes going on with the BODE doing this new MassSave consultations, and so we're sort of in an area of figuring out how all that's going to work, but I think that's something we'll talk about in the question round. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Susan. And that was a great lead-in to give Travis an opportunity to explain your new role with MassSave and how that'll impact the support you've been providing to communities.
Thanks. So I would say the next couple of years are going to be pretty amazing in the transformation of focus on decarbonization. The work that communities like these have done over the last couple of years have really demonstrated what's possible through initiatives like this, and the sponsors of MassSave have definitely taken note. So with that in mind, at the beginning of this year, they had expanded the heating and cooling program that had been operating to also include more comprehensive decarbonization consultations. Those are delivered through a BODES team as MassSave. This is similar to services that we're doing in Connecticut and Rhode Island as well for other statewide programs. But specifically to these training programs as well, we will be with MassSave deploying training here in the coming months for energy advocates to begin to get this similar level of baseline information and then ongoing support. And the goal here is really to recognize that helping empower communities and volunteers is part of what is going to be necessary to have this transformation that MassSave is trying to drive. And so by enabling more training and education and then still having the backup technical support from building scientists and mechanical experts to be able to support customers when they go to that kind of next level is the strategy of change that we're implementing here. And so I know there's some folks from MassSave here today as well, National Grid, and I think that we're looking ahead with a lot of optimism to lean into what was said by our lunch speaker in terms of being able to find new innovative ways to support these programs and be able to build capacity across multiple communities, not to be rude to my friends and clients over here, but more affluent suburban communities. We really have to think about this from an equity standpoint as well. And that's what's happening now in this transformation. And so residents that are eligible for MassSave are able to now go to the MassSave website and schedule a decarbonization consultation. It's a virtual consultation. I will say that the demand is very high for those currently, which is a great problem to have, but also can be frustrating for folks that are looking for kind of near-term support. And so we are actively working with the sponsors to address that as best we can in the near term. But there are a lot of great resources that are in process of being developed and that will be deployed through MassSave in the coming months here. So we're just really excited about kind of the evolution, and just a quick thank you and nod to kind of all the predecessors here that really allowed for the proof of concept to be able to now be scaled and have more impact statewide.
Thanks, Travis. So a question for the two towns or municipalities representative. If you had a wish list of support that you'd like to have from a BODE or from the state or from MassSave, what's on that list?
I'm taking notes, by the way.
I say from the state, more funding to sustainably support these programs. And I think about other communities too, and the amount of, we needed that initial hand-holding from a BODE. I think we're in a position now where we understand how the program works. We still need some of that technical support from a BODE, but I think those startup costs, so I'm not really answering your question of what we need, but I think what other municipalities would need is funding, startup funds to set up the program, and maybe like a 2-year round of funding where they get the startup funds and then another year of operational funds. And I think it would be wonderful for communities to count on that.
Great.
And if it could be longer than 2 years, that'd be even better. Yeah.
Susan?
I guess I'm going to focus on data as my wish list. So like we're in a community first partnership, and so far like we're getting numbers on our HVAC installs, but we still don't know how many of them were heat pumps versus something else. And to be like in a partnership and have a goal to increase heat pump uptake and not be able to get the information from the entity that has it about how many heat pump incentives they've given is sort of, it's just frustrating. Like we need to have this information to know what's working and what's not working. The other piece of information I think that would be helpful, I think it's really hard right now for residents to, there's an enormous list of MassSave approved contractors, but how do you sort through who's good for a particular project or what kind of work that they do? When we started, Abode had done these vetted contractor lists, which I think was useful to narrow things down for people, but even those got kind of too big. I will put a shout out to Laminar Collective. One of their people is here now who's done benchmarking work. They'll get like 25 quotes for a particular project, and it just gives you some insight into sort of the contractors, which ones are sort of high-end premium ones versus mid-market versus like these guys are sort of value ones that you really can't, it's really hard to get that kind of information. So you have people kind of going out, like just looking on Yelp or asking their neighbors and kind of getting a random set of quotes and not knowing whether they went to the 3 most expensive people in the state or not. And so it's got to be a way to sort of give people better information about contractors.
I'll totally second that, yeah.
Can I say one quick thing, which is, and I'm saying this kind of to you, you tell, is that I think, given where we are, I think that in terms of vendors, particularly around heat pumps, that, maybe there's a next layer of nuance, like which vendors are really great with like incredibly drafty old houses and air sealing them, or which vendors are really good at, other kinds of sort of nuanced configurations that show up. So that's just another thought on that.
And I'll just, can I just add that, like one of the things we're looking at, we have a large sort of condo complex, like 155 units, and people can't get quotes. And to try and figure out what installer would even go and look at these units and give them quotes has been really, really, really difficult. So like people were, resorting to going to like the guy who worked on the AC units who's not even on the MassSave contractor list, just because no one would even, they got 2 people to come, one of them ghosted them, and the other was, $30,000 for a 2 indoor head units, mini split. So yeah, so knowing which contractors do which work is really difficult.
Yeah, I think that there is definitely a lot of focus on how to better support customers in finding good solutions, whether that's contractors that are in their area, as well as what do they do once they get those quotes. And so just looking ahead to other services, things that we've been doing for communities that are up here is actually doing quote comparison reports for residents. So as they get their quotes, being able to have a data-driven side-by-side analysis of those options, then to be able to make a decision that one is better than the other for them, or maybe they need to actually go back out and solicit more quotes because none of the solutions actually met their goals. So again, in near future through MassSave, there are going to be a lot more resources out there along those lines that should be helping. And hear everything y'all are saying. Agree?
Great. Well, I see some hands up, and so we'll take questions. I think hopefully the microphone over there is open so that everybody can hear your questions.
Hi, my name is Wendy Stahl. I'm from Brookline. We have applied for ARPA funding a year ago to pay for a coaching program, but we've been without a sustainability director for 9 months, and so we haven't been able to actually do this. But a lot has changed in the last 9 months with what's available. And so if MassSave is now going to provide coach training, does that mean that that will be free of charge? And is that coming like in the actual near future?
Yes to the first question, for sure. Lost my mic.
Oh, here, take this.
Thank you so much. Yeah, definitely at no charge. Yeah, this is again an initiative that sponsors see a lot of value in, and so they're investing in it for your communities. I would say that definitely in 2024 this will be happening. We are working through the details of kind of what the content will be and how it's presented, but we are coming to the table with a great framework and a lot of experience doing this. So our hope is that we can expedite this as quickly as possible with them. And they're highly motivated to do it. So.
Does any of this coaching training address multifamily buildings?
Some. So I mean, that's a much more nuanced challenge for us, to be honest. The mechanicals of a multifamily, there's a lot of different considerations, and so there are some core principles that are definitely can translate. The content at its core is more focused on small residential, to be honest, right now, but we can work towards trying to supplement that.
Yeah, okay.
Hi, I'm also from Brookline. We're pretty active questioners. Just as a personal quick story, our gas furnace has a hole in it. We got 3 bids to do, we have a single-family home with radiator water heating, and the reason I'm even mentioning it is because the first 2 contractors told us it was impossible to have a water-based heat pump system, and the third one knew that we could. And I just feel like that's such a classic problem. And the technology, I mean, I also think it's really hard to keep up with the technology. It's constantly changing. There's great innovations. It's exciting. So I'm just wondering, what's the plan generally? Is there a way that there could be like a website that keeps up with technology? Like, hey, this exists, don't, make sure you know to ask about it or whatever. Just helping homeowners not be overly reliant on their bid things, because there's a lot more than, meets the eye and the technological changes. Or I encourage you to create that if it doesn't.
I was just gonna say that one of the things that our coaching program offers is that once a client has, consulted and they've walked through whatever it is they're gonna do, and they've gotten, let's say for heat pumps, there are multiple proposals, a boat helps them figure out how do you compare apples to, kumquats. Sorry, that, oh, I lost my train of thought. It'll come back. It's gone right now. Sorry.
Yeah, to that challenge though, so like air to water is a really good example of a technology that is well proven in other parts of the world. It's not a novel technology per se. It is novel to North America. And we actually are engaged quite closely with all the major manufacturers, looking ahead at their product lines that are going to be serving that need. And that is coming very soon. There are a handful, SpacePack and a few others, that are doing some of these now. And as part of, Mass Save Forward looking, as that is a good example of an innovative technology to our region that will help meet the demands of a lot of families. And so they're highly motivated to help as the pieces of equipment get verified and are approved for use here. There will be a lot of focus on that. Unfortunately, I would say air to water kind of at scale is still from a year or 2 away, maybe, from what I'm hearing from a lot of the contractors, or not contractors, manufacturers. But there are some options that are out there, and it will become much more prevalent.
And I just remembered that one of the things, when our coaches work with folks is that in the harem of coaches that we have, people sort of a little bit self-select, like what is their favorite thing to work on. Like some coaches love heat pumps, other coaches are really into solar. So there's a little bit of sort of developing expertise. Like everyone is a generalist, of course, but then there is some ability, oh, you want radiant, water, hydro, radiant, whatever the system is called. I don't even know all the right words. Anyway, that's a thing that can be helpful in that regard as well.
And I just thought I'd add on you're saying like if there was a website, I honestly think there's like a lot of material out there right now, and what we're trying to figure out is, there's so much out there, like with the Clean Energy Lives Here from MassEC, and like there's just all these, and the Rewiring America. Ours is more like, all right, we have to stop like trying to update our own content and figure out where are the best places to link to. But I know the air to water, that's sort of my specialty among the coaches. But I know people are reluctant to kind of present that as, and here's another option, because it's like literally twice as expensive as a regular air source heat pump. And so it's not, it's not really comparable as a routine approach yet, but hopefully soon.
I'll just add that, so there's a lot of good information on the web, and I think part of the value that coaches provide is helping people navigate that. It's hard to, there's good stuff at the Clean Energy Lives Here site that MassCEC created. It's very consumer friendly. Green Energy Consumer Alliance has some information, Energy Sage. On the Heat Smart Alliance site, we try more to be a clearinghouse to direct people to those other sites, but we have our own publications, including an 8-page reference document on air-to-water heat pumps and the pros to con. So if in that particular topic, but it's a moving target. So I'm not, I guess I'll say I'm not optimistic about a single go-to website, but cutting through that, having somebody who can help direct people to the information that's pertinent to them and sorting out all the stuff that may not be relevant to their particular situation, I think is useful.
One thing I'll add just really quickly to that is sometimes a coach might actually not have the answer either. So if you're interested in starting a coaching program in your community, but some coaches might not have like that know everything about the technology. I think as long as there's like a willingness to work with a resident to find the solution, I think sometimes that's all you need. Because like you said, the information is out there. Sometimes it's overwhelming for one person to tackle it on their own. So having someone to support a resident through the process is sometimes all you need, even if they're not the expert, because they can probably help you connect to the experts or to the resources that you need to make a good decision.
So we're just past 2:10, which was our time limit for this. I think if the panelists are willing, we can stay on another 5 minutes or so to answer a few more questions. So, sir, please.
Yeah, I'm from MassEnergize Ashland. We just started a new program. We're definitely interested in hiring or setting up coaches for Ashland. Is the idea, I've heard of Heat Smart, I heard of Rewiring America, and I heard of Abode. Are they all independent, or should I just come to Abode? What would be my best approach to do this kind of thing? And how much would it cost? That's my other question.
So you can't go wrong with any of the above is the nice thing. So all of these programs are intended to be at no charge at this point to communities. As I mentioned, the programs that we developed in the past are now going to be offered through Mass Save at no charge. And then, of course, Heat Smart Alliance has just got a tremendous wealth of knowledge in helping to build and support capacity within communities and is ongoingly doing training. And I know that Rewiring America has ongoing trainings available online as well. Gives you not a great answer.
Craig.
Oh, hi, my name is Craig Foreman. I'm from Newton. We were in the class of 2020 along with Melrose as part of the Heat Smart program, and we've kind of continued that on. But I have a question for Travis. I'm very happy to hear that we're getting this relationship with Mass Save started, and there'll be what you called some free decarbonization consultations. Would that potentially include also use of the comparison tool, or is that unknown?
Yes, in time.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the second part of the question is, we already have home energy assessments going on, and we talk about that all the time. Get a home energy assessment if you haven't had one in 2 years. Is there any possibility that the home energy assessments, and somebody's going into the home already, could be combined with what you've called a decarbonization consultation, so that somebody could go into the house and do what they do now, but maybe also, if they're interested in it, also do this other decarbonization consultation?
Yeah, absolutely. So with Mass Save and the current energy assessment kind of experience, We are working with the home performance contractors and the other lead vendors to continue to expand the focus of decarbonization, recognizing that they're already doing a lot in the home during that short amount of time. So we're trying to find like the right balance. It is an iterative process. We are also working with MassCEC on the Decarbonization Pathways Program, which actually does exactly what you just described, where we are coupling a mass save energy assessment with a deeper, more engaged decarbonization visit, so that the clients at that point end their experience from the assessment standpoint with clear, actionable steps to take within Mass Save, but then also a roadmap to decarbonize. And then we're there to kind of support them along the way. That is similarly, there are going to be other programs rolled out later this year through Mass Housing that'll be doing similar types of structures. So there's a lot of focus on that. It's an evolving landscape.
And I think we'll take one more and then, sorry.
Rick Devereaux from EcoNatick, a volunteer. One of the things we do is an Earth Day weekend, and we have a fair, an earth-friendly fair on the Common, and we have events all around town. I'm hosting a solar event at a development that allowed us to put solar on townhouse roofs. And with a heat pump coach at my side, I could also do a heat pump open house at my house. But I just wonder, do any of you work with, make appearances at events, small events where you interact directly with consumers, like either our Earth Friendly Fair or, an open house? No guarantee on how many people would show up. But is there a heat pump coach that could come? We only have one that I know of in Natick.
Mark Ralston.
Yeah, and I know Mark, and he came to our solar thing last year, and he's a great guy.
Yeah.
Why do we only have one? I don't understand it. And
well,
where are they when we need them?
So Mark took the Heat Smart Alliance Coaching Basics course last spring, and I'm happy that he's continued coaching. The Heat Smart Alliance will provide speakers for public events. We did one for Natick for Jillian Wilson-Martin's request. I was the speaker about a year ago, and it was a heat pump pizza party. So we provide those speakers. We've done already, I think, we did about 30 of those events last year, plus some tabling. But we try to rely on, because we're all volunteers, we try to rely on the local volunteers where we can. So we got to get more volunteers in Natick and train them up and get them going. And they've got a great mentor in Mark, because Mark's built some experience now.
Okay, so Mark always says he's too busy. So I go back to Mark and say, yeah. Okay, thank you.
I will say you should, I don't see Karen here, but Karen Root-Watkins from Energize Acton organizes a clean energy home tour every month. And it's a different home every time. So maybe I can connect you with her, and you can talk about engaging volunteers to make events happen. Yeah.
I'll connect with you.
Well, I want to thank all my fellow contributors here, and I hope you found it informative. And there's a break now, and the sessions resume at past.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, everybody. I know you're having very valuable conversations, but I'm going to ask you to bring your valuable conversation to a close so that we can get started with our final panel. So I'm going to ask everybody to please end your conversations for now and come find a seat.
Okay, everybody, thank you very, very much. I hope everybody had a great session in one of the breakout rooms, and I really appreciate everybody's cooperation, just kind of moving through. I know this is one of the wonderful things about an in-person conference is meeting new friends, seeing old friends, and we really want you to have that opportunity. We are going to have at the end of the session an opportunity just to have some coffee and some networking and further conversation, but we are going to go ahead and get started with our final panel. So I am pleased to announce that we are just about to start. We unfortunately, due to weather, we don't have everybody on the panel, but I would like to introduce our panel moderator. Our panel moderator tonight or this afternoon, is a Boston Globe, our very own hometown Boston Globe reporter on climate, Sabrina Shankman. Thank you, Sabrina, for the work you do. Sabrina Shankman covers the climate crisis as a reporter for the Boston Globe as part of the Into the Red team. She joined the newspaper in 2021 after reporting for 8 years at Inside Climate News, where she covered the Arctic. At the Globe, her work helps readers understand climate change-fueled extreme weather events, the emerging science and policy of climate change, and the work being done at the state and regional level to address the climate crisis. I'm now going to pass it to Sabrina, and we're going to have our panelists introduce themselves as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, and thanks for having me. So hello and welcome to the final panel of today's conference, which is called Starting Conversations and Inspiring Action, Building the Climate Movement. As was just explained, my name is Sabrina Shankman. I report on climate change at the Boston Globe. I've had the great pleasure of speaking with a good, solid handful of you for stories that I've done along the way, and I look forward to speaking with a lot more of you. So, don't be a stranger. And thanks to the event organizers for having me. This is something I've been really looking forward to. I think the way that we talk and engage around climate change is one of the most important ways that we can make a difference. And I'm glad to have these folks here who are so good at doing exactly that. So joining me today are the esteemed panelists. Next to me here, we have Sue Vatnick, a volunteer with This Is What We Did, a group that taps into people 50 and over to teach them how to have effective conversations about climate change. Next to her is Crystal Johnson, the state's Assistant Secretary of Environmental Justice, who also has a background in sparking these conversations at a community level and a local level, which she'll talk about in a bit. Next to her is Frank Lowenstein, who leads the Climate Culture Boston program for RARE, an international conservation organization. And finally is Dara Riley, a New York-based environmental activist with Carbon Crew Project. So thank you all for being here. And a heads up to everyone, during the second half of this conversation, I will be opening it up for questions from you all. So this is your warning to think of something brilliant to ask the folks up here. I'll let you know when it's your turn. So as we know, there's a lot of ways that conversations around climate change can go, one of which is pretty scary and can be debilitating. I want to start off by asking everyone, what are the most important tenets that you have found for sparking a productive conversation around climate change, one that energizes instead of overwhelms? And Sue, we could start with you.
Thank you, Sabrina. I just want to say I'm so happy to be here and have the opportunity to be on this panel with all these great people. And I also want to say I'm an ordinary person, and I was a special education teacher for years, and we need all of us from all of our different backgrounds to do this. We need to grow a huge movement to put the brakes on climate change. And a motto one of my groups uses is pick a lane, pick a speed, but do something. And that something can be as simple as having an effective climate conversation. And as you say, there are different ways to have those conversations, and if not done with care, they can go off the rails. So one point I want to make is that if you have a conversation in a way that's going to cause a reactance, you're probably going to end that conversation quickly. And reactance is a simple idea. It's the idea that if pushed, people push back. And so I'm sure we've all had situations with families or friends in a conversation where that person is pushing their point so intently and not really listening to what we have to say or giving us space to say something that we tend to disengage even if we agree with their point. So engaging someone and drawing someone into a conversation, I really see it as having a double goal conversation. And that first goal is to connect with the other person and build some rapport. And to do that, you need to meet them where they are and find some common ground. And you do that through being curious and asking questions and then listening and doing some active listening so that you can listen for what they care about and what concerns them. And then the second goal is to engage in and around climate change in a way that connects with their values and what's really important to them. And so in that way, you have a better chance of maybe opening their thinking or moving them towards action.
Thanks, Sue. What about you, Crystal?
Yes. Very important question, especially on not overwhelming. For some of the work that I'm focused on now that builds on some of the work that I've done before, while there are many different pathways and different strategies, one that I highly value and I suggest for anybody in any type of impact work is consider how to engage youth. I've always focused on youth for different reasons. One, because usually they're not included, and they should be because they are hyper aware and concerned, and maybe they are naturally overwhelmed about their immediate future, whether they're under 10 in their teens and what will be like for they're in their 20s and 30s. And that when you engage them, that's twofold. One, when I've worked with them, engage them around climate issues that they could take home regarding what's happening in their home, what's happening in their school, what's happening in their companies that their parents work at, what's happening in the communities. Because while there's so many different campaigns to reach out to adults, social media, buses, everywhere, if you want it to get into their house, you empower a third grader regarding a topic. They'll bring it up at breakfast, they'll bring it up at dinner, they'll bring it up over the weekend, and it will engage at a chronic level that no other campaign at a price point could. And so I value youth for that, but also regarding, again, reaching that adult pool through the youth, is that you're asking them, like, what do you think? And engaging, what are your ideas around any issue that they can think of, like food, energy, transportation, waste. Youth have some idea, even once you get past maybe some of the social dynamics or maybe being a shy or personality, everybody has an idea. You can look at me and be like, wow, I like her shirt, I don't like her shirt. And I tell youth, you all have an idea. What is one? And I frame it around adults necessarily don't have a solid solution, or we wouldn't be in this problem and still perpetuating over decades of having the same conversation. So what would their ideas be, and that their ideas matter? Then you empower them, the parents come, we hold climate adaptation challenges, but not everybody's into STEM, so we did eco art. And then there's climate think tanks. And then there are climate slams, because somebody can talk about poetry, do a dance. I once saw a performance done in a style called crunk, where it was done to depict how Mother Nature was feeling. But you engaged a youth that's usually from a population that's not maybe into STEM, but they have a creative element. But it's getting everybody to talk, it's getting them involved with their schools, the community, the family, la-di-da, and so forth. So I very much value engaging youth back and forth in different manners, and that's just a starting point.
As the parent of a third grader, I can attest to how relentless they are. And also, they really love the planet. So they are good, they are very strong advocates. Frank, what would you say?
So as you all have already heard today, RARE focuses on behavior science so people and nature can thrive. We often apply that in communities. We have a lot of community experience as well. So we have this whole research-based collaboration with the Potential Energy Coalition on 8 principles for effective climate change that we have over at our table. We also have QR codes if you don't want the paper. And I'm just going to highlight one of those, which is making climate action normal. You know, it's not exceptional. Certain aspects of it, everybody does. Think about recycling. Recycling is now something that, like, yeah, of course there's going to be a recycling bin at the conference center. Everybody recycles. Well, in 1978, when I was in high school and went out with my ecology club collecting newspapers in the neighborhood, it wasn't normal. People were like, you can recycle newspaper? Wow. We made enough money off recycling that newspaper to have a whole beach trip out with the whole club. It was great. So that leads me to my other suggestion, which is make it fun. You know, I really loved Anne's talk, the keynote talk, and Janari's talk on climate optimism. And I loved the idea that climate change doesn't have to be a downer and climate action doesn't have to be something depressing that we have to undertake because it's important, which it is. We have to undertake it. It is important, but it can be really fun too. Like designing your solar system or figuring out how you can get a heat pump in your house or going out to test drive a bunch of electric cars. Wow, who doesn't want to do all those things? That's fun.
Thanks, Frank. So Dar, the question is the basic tenets of sparking a good conversation.
Well, for most of my life, I would say don't do it at all, because I am so shy that it just is excruciating to mention this to somebody. So I'm going to tell you, if I can do it, you can do it. I will say that the sensitivity has got to be there, that we're not pushing anybody. We're not making them out to be abandoned if they're not doing what we expect them to do. But bringing the topic up just casually and looking at their response. It's interesting because we've created this program, the Carbon Crew program, and people come together so that they can talk over 5 sessions, and the conversations they have inspire one another totally. And as we know from the presentations we heard today, that we're looking at that population who's ready to do something. So we want to preach to the choir. We want to go ahead and talk to them. And that's how the change happens. That's how we engage the businesses. That's how we engage policy, is even just letting other people know what it is that we're doing, even if we're not nudging them to do something else. So I say, be willing to talk to the choir, be willing to say something generally, and this is how we're going to create the impact that we need today.
So Dar, is the idea then you preach to the choir and hope that the congregants are also paying attention and that they also get on board too? I mean, there's, obviously it takes more than just the choir, right, to address the climate crisis.
What we're doing is getting us and the choir to talk to all their friends. And again, that's actually part of our homework from week to week, is that your intention is to bring out, not necessarily specifically what they're doing, but their concerns, but also it helps if they're talking about the positive things they're doing. Sue, did you mention the program that you've got for 3 sessions of conversations, teaching people to talk?
Oh, push the button.
Yeah, thanks, Dar. Yeah, as a matter of fact, we do, it's called an Effective Climate Conversation class, and it's 3 sessions. And to your point, in between each session, your homework is to go out and have a climate conversation. Our first session is pretty intense in terms of just how do you go about doing that in an effective way, but then we give you a chance to practice. And so you go out and have a conversation, take some notes, bring it back to the group. So these are all online. And we've been meeting with people across the country from many different states. So it's a fascinating experience to listen to everybody else's experience about their conversations. And so then we debrief a little bit and talk about what worked and what didn't work. But it's through practice that you get more comfortable and you get better.
If I could just add on to that, behavioral research shows that every one of us has a superpower. And that superpower is that your friends and your social network value you, right? Otherwise, they wouldn't be your friends. So you have more influence with them than you're going to have with anyone else. And it also can overcome some barriers. Like, you know, I'm an older, bald, white guy. You know, if I go into a rave and start trying to talk to people about climate change, it's probably not going to have much impact. People might think I'm raving. But, you know, if I talk to those same people around the Thanksgiving dinner table, then I might have some impact because I'm their uncle or whatever. So, you know, take advantage of your superpower. Talk to your friends. They want to hear what you are doing. They want to know what's going on in your life. They want to hear why you care about climate change.
Go ahead.
If I could add to that, you know, having these conversations, you can have them with anybody. You know, you can strike it up with your hairdresser or the grocery store, or, you know, elected officials is a really good one to have a conversation with. But that's to your point, we really need to just keep having these conversations, getting more comfortable to draw more and more people into this movement.
Well, let's be a little bit, like, what do you guys mean when you say climate conversations? Because there are a lot of different ways that that could go. Let's be as tangible, take home as we can. What is a climate conversation? Crystal, do you want to start?
I was going to first respond
Go ahead,
on
go
the
right
first
ahead.
part.
Yeah.
But it does relate to the conversation, and there's so many different ones, but it depends on maybe which community you're at, because the climate crisis can look different in different communities, and what's a pertinent issue in one area versus just what you want to bring up, versus cross-cutting issues. And so you have lots of choices, unfortunately, regarding which ones to bring up. I wanted to add into the conversation still about engagement, and as I mentioned, I valued working with youth, and I just want to give one more refined understanding, hopefully as a model. When working with youth, did it multi-sector, because what I did was called in those officials to help judge, called in a committee of legislators to give citations to people who would win, so that they came, because you bring them, you bring a whole entourage and world. Worked with businesses to say, oh, the youth are getting involved in climate awareness, climate adaptation. Can you give them like a free pizza certificate? Can you give something? And then what are some of the things that you can do to highlight like your recycling, getting away from styrofoam or such? So we worked with the businesses so that it became multi-sector, and it helped with awards also. We worked, of course, with schools. We had nonprofits come in, but we were so effective when we engaged with youth that got to the parents, as I said, about homeschool work communities, that other organizations said, you know what, you've reached them so well, can we have tables at your event and have our message there too? And so the youth channel with multi-sector partnerships, I really want to help stress that. It does tie into being, having a more joyful, solutions-oriented approach when you say, what are your ideas? What do you think? Because then you can have policy people there. You can have business people say, oh, what are you doing? And how can you make a commitment or a challenge? Because in front of youth, they're not going to say no. So there are many different ways, but I want to stress that. Regarding the conversation, as I said, it can really depend on the community and immediate issues, because there's short term, there's long term, there's air, water, soil, carbon, electrification, there's so many, and how do you create a series without overwhelming or isolating people? And it's complicated, it is.
Has anybody on here found any answers to how you go about doing that? How do you dip your toe into the water and effectively open up a vein for speaking about this? Sue, you want to talk?
I can speak to that. Thank you, Sabrina. I think that when you want to engage people in conversation, the most important thing is you really need to meet people where they are. So you really need to do some listening and active questioning to kind of find out what matters to that person. You need to look for some common ground. And so that speaks to your point. You need to know who you're speaking with. One of the things I brought up in my talk this morning is about some research that Yale Climate Change Communication conducted, and they put a report out called Global America's, what is it, Global America's Six Americas, thank you. And it's a spectrum of categories from dismissives all the way up to alarmed. And so that's a really important thing, is to think about where this person might be in their climate journey. Where are they in their thoughts about climate change? And then do some active listening so that you know how to bring up something that will matter to them. And that's, I think, really crucial, is you're going to develop a conversation around what really concerns them.
Yeah.
One thing just to add to that, because you're absolutely right, that whether you're engaging an individual or engaging a community, listening first regarding what are their needs, their voices, their concerns, because then you'll understand what are those immediate issues. And then from there, defining or determining, how does this conversation continue? Are we going to follow up monthly, quarterly? Would you want to start with this issue, that issue? But it does start with engagement. as I say, meaningful, but letting other people provide what their interest is based on their experiences, their lived experience.
Dar, I wonder if you could chime in about the idea of creating the personal climate action plan, right? Because that seems like that's something that comes out of these conversations, and then it becomes a deliverable almost for a person.
People have the opportunity to do a little bit of reading research beforehand with the material that we give them, such as this. And so they're coming with the directive to the meeting that this week we're doing a personal climate action plan about consumption, possibly something like that. So there's already dialogue structured into the program itself. We also have a conversation in the very beginning about what somebody got inspired by the readings and the viewings that they did. So there's an instant way to start the conversation. And I think it's beautiful that the two of you both pointed out that the most important part of a conversation is really that we listen. There's no conversation unless there's a listener. So when we're a good listener, then all of the, it's an open space for people to contribute. And having those conversations, everyone inspires one another. And then we get personal climate action plans that without the conversation would be blip, blip, blip. But after the conversations happen, we're all like, okay, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. Thanks.
Okay, so this is all well and good when it comes to speaking with the choir, but I think we all have a cranky uncle at the table that might have some questions about the validity of this climate crisis thing, because the climate's always been warming, and what about the batteries and where they're getting the minerals from? And right, we've all, I mean, I just wrote about whales and wind turbines. There's all sorts of messes that you can walk into. How do you have a productive conversation about climate change? What does it even look like when you come up against perhaps misinformation, well-intentioned misinformation that someone's been receiving, misunderstanding, whatever it may be, because no one likes to be told, no, you're wrong, right? So what do you say? Anybody want to jump in first?
Sure. To me, you can't confront that, right? It's just giving it more credence. And it's just, they're not going to believe you if they're already in that committed to disbelief. So you don't necessarily approach it that way. Climate change is connected in so many ways into our society, and we're realizing those ways more and more. So maybe it's a conversation about, well, not only would eating less beef really help the planet, but it might help your blood pressure too. And maybe you care about animal welfare. Let's talk about animal welfare and how that can also be helped by other things. And by the way, did you notice how delicious that tempeh stew I served you was? I would recommend not trying to engage the cranky uncle on climate science. I don't think that usually is going to go particularly good places. But think about what are the other avenues, and it relates to what everyone else has been saying about the need to listen, to hear your audience, to hear what they care about, and then to exercise your creativity to find the points of connection.
One thing that I would like to add, and it is very hard to have to engage people who are cut off, not interested, not even on the fence, they don't want to be on there. And I actually, about 10 years ago, kind of pursued that path. And what I did was I used to put on these sustainable economy conferences around government, business, nonprofit, community, academia, looking at sustainability, sustainable solutions, and equity, things we're talking about now. And one of the things that I also did with other conferences to get corporations to advance sustainability and equity, particularly, especially 10, 12 years ago, that was not the conversation people are interested in having. But I said, I have to do something. And what I did was approach them on what they value. If it's economics, and so anything that I approach with business or a more conservative group made a soft, passive approach regarding the economics. And highlighted and awarded other businesses that were doing just a little bit more and noted it as a competitive edge. So there's always something that somebody does value, and they are hyper concerned that somebody else, what it is they value, could outdo it in that way. And how could you then have another company, their competitor, and say like, wow, they should be promoted and advertised and marketed that you're doing this, and then that does inspire. So trying to find out what that contact or population has a value, and then approaching them on that, because everything correlates, as well as that recognition, keyword recognition of who gets recognized for that versus not, because again, comes down to economics. So that was one approach. And then what I really did was when I held a space like that, I had to be hypersensitive. I said, well, I can't just use a regular convention center space. I went to the Federal Reserve Bank and I held it there. Because if you're gonna work with businesses, you have to go to the piece of the belly type of such. And I did that. And as you engage, it's really great to be here with everybody. But usually people are like, oh, you're going to a certain conference. And sometimes I'm like, sometimes I will, because it's great to hear new knowledge, but sometimes I'm like, no, I've got to go where we're not at, because I love talking with like-minded people, but also for time, I'm like, I've got to go somewhere else, because we have, to me, time, money not to waste, and how do you engage those people? And that's something that I enjoy the challenge of addressing, but economics is one model.
Well, I think that example of going to the Federal Reserve is a great tangible example. Before I open it up for questions, Sue, I was wondering, you have prepared that we can model a couple of different ways into a conversation, is that right?
Sure, I can do that with you.
Let's do it.
All right. Okay, so I thought what I would do is first do a conversation that I would potentially get a reactance from you, and the idea of pushing her, and most likely she would push back or disengage. So an example of that might be, Sabrina, sorry, let me get this in front of me. Sabrina, I've been thinking a lot about climate change recently, and I'm really worried about it. And, people need to wake up to the fact that we have global warming. It's real, it's happening now. We're meeting the 1.5 degrees Celsius, and we need to stop burning fossil fuels now. I mean, why aren't we banning gas in buildings, yesterday? Or people need to be lowering their carbon footprint. It's like, why aren't we all thinking about getting heat pumps or, getting EVs for our next vehicle? It's outrageous people aren't doing more.
I'm just gonna hide under the table quickly. Yeah, I could see how that would not be the most effective way in.
And that was a little over the top, I know, but the whole
Although I will tell you, I have people who approach me as a journalist sometimes with that fire hose of doom. Mm-hmm. So it is a way that people,
fire hose of doom, I love it.
All right, so what's a more productive way?
Okay, so it took me less than a minute to to bombard you with those facts, in my opinion. So, and it shut the conversation down. So if you're going to engage somebody, it's going to take a little bit more time, because you're looking to make that connection. And so just a caveat that with this, we don't have that time here, so I'm going to move you ahead a little bit.
Sure.
All right. So Sabrina, it's so great to see you. How are your kids?
We can.
Yes,
they're
we're
great.
going to jump down. So, I was walking in the park yesterday, and it was so fun to see all the signs of spring everywhere, and like listening to the birds. And do you and your kids like to spend a lot of time outdoors?
We sure do.
What do you like to do out there?
Oh, we ski, we hike, you name it.
Oh my gosh! And I bet they would spend all day outside.
Sure would.
Yeah. When I think about that, I just think about last summer, and when we were having those extreme fires up in Canada, and it was such a shocker for all of us on the East Coast. And my West Coast friends are used to that, but we sure weren't. And to be experiencing that terrible, air quality, that must have been really tough on you. Did the kids have to stay inside for?
Yeah, we had to be really thoughtful about what we could do outside at the time.
Yeah, because young lungs are developing, and I know my dad's 95, and I think about it from that end too. So, yeah,
it was scary, huh?
It is scary. I was reading that actually about that a little bit, and I was reading about the fact that the frequency and the scale of those Canadian fires is largely due to climate change. And the scientists were able to pinpoint that, just the warming was drying out the underbrush and the vegetation, and it was like a big tinderbox. And, and then there's a greater chance for lightning strikes. So that was really a scary thought to recognize that that was happening due to climate change. Do you worry about your kids' future?
Oh, God. This is great. I mean, I think A, yes, I do. But B, that I can see how that would be a far more kind of welcoming, natural way to talk to someone about this that might bring everybody on board.
And then I'd want to close it. I mean, I had another question I might ask you. It's like, what would be, if you can imagine a better tomorrow for your kids, what would that look like?
I mean, a livable planet and all the creatures still alive that we grew up with, and winters that are snowy like the ones I had as a kid in Maine.
Yeah. This has been wonderful just having this conversation. I hope we can continue it again sometime. I have a 4-action flyer that gives you some I was a mom and I raised 3 kids and I was working full time, and you don't have another minute, but you could share this flyer if you were interested.
All
Great
right.
to see you again.
Thank you. All right, well, thank you, Sue, I appreciate that. Before we open it up, anybody want to kind of piggyback on that at all, or should we see what the questions are from? All right. I think, are there microphones somewhere that are?
If you could use the microphone on the right side of the room, please.
It's right over here, see?
Dar, when you have all these climate action plans that you've gotten over the years, you have them write it down. And what have you seen in these action plans? You have a whole variety of people that take this course. So can you highlight to the audience what you're seeing in the variety?
Well, thank you, Marjorie, and thank you for bringing me here. Marjorie has done more crews, 18 crews, than anybody else out there. But it is amazing to see what people are doing. Of course, they want to put in solar, and it does depend whether they're a homeowner and they have some financial support, or if they're a renter, or if they're a student. But they really start to understand the drawdown 100 priority solutions. So for example, if I stop creating food waste, that's a #1 solution, and they're putting their attention to that. It's really interesting. Some people are saying, hey, man, we really changed the way we ate food, and I lost 20 pounds. So that's a funny little result of it. But they're also changing their consumption patterns. So it's not just put in heat pumps or put in solar or start planting trees. It's a whole gambit of different kinds of things, including changing their banks, changing their credit cards. So they're looking at their whole behavioral patterns and things that are about their residences and their transportation. It's a 5-year plan that people are making, and what they're shooting for is creating a 5-year plan that will reduce their carbon footprint by 50%. So they've got a goal that's out there, and what people discover after they've done that, if they project out 5 years, they're really reducing their Earth overshoot day by quite a few months. And that's a measure of the energy that we're using on the Earth that we can't support. Thanks for the question.
That's a great question. Thanks for that, Dar. Anyone else who has questions, step right up to the microphones. Yeah, go right ahead, yeah. And anyone else who's going to have a question, feel free to get to the microphone just so we can take advantage of our time. Go ahead.
That was a great example of a conversation, and I appreciate not pushing because someone will push back. But if someone has actively, like, they're telling you misinformation, how do you deal with that?
Okay. That's a good, thank you for that question. That's a good one. if people are dealing with misinformation and you have a way to help them understand the correct information, I think that it's fair to say, something like, I have an article or something, I'd love to share it with you, would be interested. But if you don't have the information, I always fall back on, I don't know the answer to that, but let me get back to you. I'm not sure that that's not what I understand to be the fact, but I would love to carry this conversation more. So again, it's trying in a gentle way to tease out a way to provide the correct information would be the way I might go about it.
Frank or Crystal, do either of you want to chime in a bit?
Well, I prefer the more direct approach, How could you possibly believe that?
And I think I'm probably somewhere in between, because depending on who you're talking with, and hopefully whether you really knew them or you're just quickly doing a quick psychoassessment, and for a few seconds to understand, what is the best approach to get them to respond. Because sometimes we may be afraid to say that word. People are afraid to know, but it's not really anything personal. So to say someone like, "You're misinformed," and they're like, "Am I?" Versus you're like, "Oh my gosh, I can't say that." But I've said to people just, with love, "You're misinformed. You're really misinformed." And then that can spark either for them to get informed. I may not have the information, but I've come out and blatantly said that I've seen other people do that. And versus it's not combative, it's just clear and done.
I would just add, sometimes when I've run into this situation, I've said, "Oh, that's interesting. I had a different understanding of that. Would you share the resources that you've read that from?" And I would love to show you what I've read that that I base this on, and it can open up a conversation as opposed to having someone kind of be offended.
I think something Crystal said too, approaching it with love. And so if there's anything if this is someone if this is someone you even have we just had lunch together relationship with, showing that you care about them before you dive into any of the potential approaches might be helpful.
Dar, did you want to jump in on that at all? Okay. Yeah, go right ahead.
Yeah, we chatted about this a little bit at lunch. So there's part of me that says, do I even need to have this conversation about climate change if I kind of want to talk about solutions that just make their lives better, and whether they believe the earth is warming or not, they want AC. They don't have it. Turns out there are good ways to get AC that also are good for the planet, and I don't have to even talk about that. So I'm increasingly having more conversations, just jump to that and sort of stay out of this thicket. So I'm just curious, EVs are really fun to drive, right? Heat pumps give me air conditioning. All of these things just make my life better. Thoughts about that?
Do any of you opt for the don't talk about the climate, but talk about the other benefits approach?
I personally don't, but I know within RARE's climate culture program, there is a strong contingent of us that feel that that is a very important approach. And what's interesting too is that our research shows that we tend to underestimate how many people are going to be receptive to the particular behaviors that one would adopt to address climate change. So to Ellen's example, the heat pump. Maybe you don't want a heat pump because because of climate, but maybe you want one because you get air conditioning as a result. So there might be ways that sort of approaching the other angles can bring more people into the fold.
And one thing just to add is that there is no one right or wrong way, because as there are so many of us here, there are so many different ways of our personalities, our experiences, our triggers, and that when you engage with somebody else, I've always valued, even when I was putting this together, the conferences that I had mentioned from like 10, 12 years ago, it was around the psychology of people and having a human intelligence on being aware versus not. And so I do like your approach, because some people you could have a more direct conversation with, versus many, it's a perfect way to approach. So they're all valid, and just being sensitive to who you're talking with and reading the room, meeting them where they're at. And then even sometimes one thing I have to say is, while we're so engaged with getting a message and a point to the person we're looking at, also being very aware of your own self and your own emotional, mental health, because it is really intense, heavy. It seems many of us have been doing this for decades, and still at the point it can get frustrating. And then saying, like, you know what, I'm not able to do that today. I'm going to be a little bit more of take it in a different approach. So as much as you put energy into being mindful of somebody else, be more mindful also of where you are, so that you can keep doing what you do.
All right. I would also, just a plug for a former colleague of mine from Inside Climate News, had a great article last week where he interviewed, I forget what Middle America city he was in, but he interviewed an EV car salesman in a liberal county and a EV car salesman in a conservative county. And a lot of it was about selling the comfort and the drivability of EVs. It was a really, really well done article, I thought. This is gonna be our last question from the group, so go right ahead.
I'm David Green, and I'm a consultant to help people cut their carbon emissions by saving money. And what I've found in my experience with working with homeowners is that the most effective single way of getting them to cut carbon emissions is to not talk about climate change. Is to talk about saving money.
Right.
Everyone wants to save money. And the fact is today, the subsidies are so good and the technology is so good, you can save money with solar panels almost universally, heat pump hot water tank almost universally, heat pumps 50-50, depends on your electricity provider and your source of heating fuel. Propane is good. Heating oil, good as in you will save money if you're on propane or heating oil, less so if you're on natural gas. But focusing on saving money, I can have a long, productive conversation with people, and at the end you say, oh, and by the way, you're going to help reduce climate change. They're like, oh, great, thanks. But if I start there, you get brick wall immediately. But you start with saving money, and it goes very easily, in my experience.
Just to add to that, as I mentioned when I engage business, it is on the economics. But one thing that I've had conversations with friends who had marketing companies and such, and I'm like, the marketing, I still think somewhat needs to change, because we're still, to be more effective, to get different responses, like trying to figure out what is that messaging, what is the angle, versus not the polar bears, we've seen how that has worked, versus versus some of the other approaches, but on the economics or the comfortability, but trying to figure out that messaging. And it will be multifaceted because there's so many different people and such, but that approach is something that as an environmentalist first, have not yet seen us really capture to advance the way we need to.
Yeah, that's a great point. All right, well, we are going to wrap things up, unfortunately, because we are running out of time. So the last question that I'm going to ask you, because this whole panel, the idea is building the climate movement through these conversations, what is one concrete step that attendees can take now or tomorrow, but soon, to contribute to building the climate movement? And we'll go right down the line, so you can go first.
Excuse me. So I'm sure that you can guess what mine is. What everyone can do every day is to have effective climate conversations. And I feel that actually, I'm sure many of you know or have read Katharine Hayhoe, some of her things. She's a well-known climate scientist. And what she says is that the most important thing that we can do to fight climate change is to talk about it. And she goes on to say, if we don't hear people talking about climate change, then why would we care? And if we don't care, why would we act? So action begins with conversations. And so I just want to say that having these important and honest, you need to create the space for people to feel comfortable and safe in having those honest, open conversations. And we need to have them across all of our communities. I keep trying to think in terms of how we can pull more diverse people into our effective climate conversations in my nonprofit. So that's what mine is. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Sue. Go ahead, Crystal.
My recommendation is based on what I had initially said, that whether you're a CBO or a network of neighborhood people, engage with your schools in the community and make it multicultural. Find out about the municipal leaders and how they could speak. Find out about how the businesses can give certificates, or reach out to me about the climate adaptation challenges and eco art programs, because then you have kids involved. They can bring literature home to the parents. The parents will come, and if you are working on a community, if you're in any community where you give a focus to youth, especially teens, people will support it because they want teens to have fruitful focus rather than what are they doing on a Friday night. So if you can target youth in your community around your conversation, give them voice, creative, and ideas, people come. That's just one start that I want to say is one action that has ripple out effect.
Great. All right, Frank?
So +1 to Sue and Crystal's suggestions. And then thinking about the audience here, that you all are to most of you at least, are part of MassEnergize communities of one sort or another. Having those conversations within your team, however you define your team, and across your teams, so that you begin to have a focus. We're gonna all talk to our friends and neighbors and relatives about solar, or about heat pumps, or about eating less meat, or wasting less food. But if you all have a common call to action within a community, then that word will spread. So.
Dara, over to you.
First, I want to have a call out to Sabrina. As Sue mentioned, Catherine Hayhoe says, talk, 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 and that's what Sabrina has brought us here for. So thank you very much. And then the next thing you can do is sign up for Carbon Crew. Look at the thing that's on your table there, or get your kids to sign up for this wonderful youth program for high schools. And they will be, because of it, talking to their parents and their grandparents. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks, Dara. And really thanks to MassEnergize for bringing everyone together, for asking me to do this. I really appreciate it. I'll give them a round of applause. All right. And thank you all.
You can also sign up a crew with Marjorie there. She's got one happening in a couple of weeks. So you can do them in a group, individually, or with students, or with Marjorie right there.
Okay, well, thank you all. Thank you, panelists. Thank you for a very engaging conversation, and all the folks who had questions, and I'm sure all of us have even more questions. So unfortunately, our day is coming very close to the end, and I just want to say a huge shout out to everybody who has devoted so much time to preparing, to thinking about what they wanted to share, to presenting, to putting together panels, to calling on friends, organizations who gave their employees days off to come to this conversation. We really appreciate it. And the conversations, plural, that we're having here are so valuable. And thanks to all of you here, and all of you here who are having those conversations and stimulating more. So, okay, well, there's just a few final things I want to say. I want to just recognize and acknowledge all the hard work that's gone into the day, all the people who've devoted their time. I do also want to just call out the people who were the breakout session leaders, and just to personally thank them from MassEnergize and from all of us. Sue Votnick, who led a wonderful presentation this morning. Martha Grover. Yeah, let's just give them all a good hand. Meryl Glassman, who led us on a conversation on fundraising. Helga Lest and Gordon Brott, who told us about leveraging social media and social tools. Sergio Velasquez Rose, who had to leave, but led a great presentation on climate messaging. Lisa Paul, who led the youth panel on youth voices. The list goes on. Ann Suduth, who really talked to us about volunteers. Ann Wright on strategizing for climate wins. Ellen Tone, who led us in the conversation about MassEnergize and the ways in which we are supercharging our local engagement events. Carlos Irisari, sorry, and the team from All In Energy, who really had put together a great panel on engaging with more diverse communities. Steve Bright, who led a great conversation on coaching, and Burnett Dawson, who really got us all thinking about what our message is. So many of you put so much effort and time in today. And again, a huge thank you to all of you who made the time today to be here. So, okay. So I'm going to ask those of you who did take part in the community art project, I would like to have a chance to display what we have. So Andrew is going to come up, Andrew and Meryl, and we're going to see how our community art project came together. Okay. It takes a village, it takes a community, and it takes a wonderful group of people adding their hands and their hearts to put together a day like today. And really, we need this for the movement. So thank you to Andrew and all the people who contributed their hands to to having all hands on deck. So let's be all taking climate action. Thank you very much. All right, thank you. Okay, and now as we wrap up, I've said a few thank yous. I do want to say one more thing just before we close out here, and that is I'd love to just hear really quickly, we're just going to take, I don't know, 1 minute or 2 minutes. I want to hear what is one, as you tap into today, what is one feeling that you're leaving here with? And we're just going to do kind of popcorn style. People can just kind of shout out one word that you're leaving here with. So I'm going to start, and I'm just going to say, I'm feeling motivated. So how about just some other words? Energized. Community. Optimistic. Hopeful. Focused. Supported. Great. Ideas. Not long enough. Okay. Resources. Great, great. Okay, so thank you. We would love to know more about what you thought. And so we do have a QR code up on the screen. If you do have if you do have your cell phone with you, we'd love for you to just take, this is literally a 2-minute survey. It's literally 2 minutes. There's a total of 6 questions that you can just go through really quickly. We would love to get your responses. It's also, you can get the QR code from the screen. It's also on the flow code. It's our very quick evaluation. We'd love to know what you think. And you could literally, it literally takes 2 minutes to do this. So I'm gonna give you a chance to pull out your phones and just answer a few questions right now. And then we will be following up later with a little bit more, a longer survey, a little bit more thoughtful. We'd love to know what you thought, what you liked, what didn't go so well, because we are planning for next year's conference. And we want you to save the date and look forward to seeing all of you next year, but we really would like to know, from the conference planning standpoint, we'd love to know what you thought and how today went. So did everybody get that on your phones? Okay. Okay, and then the final thing that we're just going to be doing, some of you, we have Bookends, which is an independent bookstore in Winchester that has been here selling books. They got started a little bit earlier, but there will be more time just at the end. In about 5 minutes, we're going to be wrapping up. We are hoping that folks who are able would like to stay. We're going to have coffee and some goodies in the Feldberg Lounge, which is just across. I don't know if we have more coffee here. I hope we do. But please stick around, visit with your friends, talk to some new people, and if you have a chance, browse the bookstore and pick up some new books. And Ann Gennari, our keynote speaker, will be signing her book, The Climate Optimist. And so we are asking you, and once again, I'm sorry about this. This is kind of this weird thing that PowerPoint did. But we are going to be having our next year conference in April, We don't have the precise date, but it will be probably the first or second week of April. So please keep us in mind, and we'd love to have you and other friends and whoever else who you'd like to invite. So we look forward to having you. Once again, thank you so much. It's been a wonderful conference, and we from MassEnergize are so grateful to all of you who've put so much in to this, to making today a success. Thank you very much. So I'm going to just end and say, on your way out, please stop by, but we are going to be taking the lanyards. We have a basket on the way out, and we'd love for you to just drop off your lanyards as you're leaving, so that we can reuse these again next year. Yes.